Good morning, my dears. Yes, it's not a bad morning here, but it's not a great one. When I get a nicer one, I will show you the view that I'm glancing at from time to time in all its greenness immediately outside my window. It's not a distant view, but it's full of green. So it's still lovely to be talking to you and refer a little more closely to our book. What's on my mind actually about the book is how much, when you're very familiar with it, if you come to love it, how much you are made aware in the book of what a retrospect it is, how much this book is written looking back, as all books are, even works of science fiction that describe the future can only use what we have from our own looking back at life in order to inform the story. So the looking backness in this book is inherent in many ways in the title and in the very idea that is so important to young James and is at issue throughout the book is the lighthouse, that lighthouse that's just so close and yet so far because of the weather and how difficult that might make it to get to the lighthouse. Nonetheless, when you look back at the past across most of a lifetime, as the author is, you think of your own childhood, of how tremendously important some small things were that you can't take seriously anymore, but you do remember how much it mattered to get to the lighthouse, which in the world of the 1920s, during which our author is writing, in a world that is trying to recover from the most devastating blows that it had ever experienced in its life, in the history of the world, a most widespread conflagration and annihilation. Still trying to recover from that, so that when you do look back and you remember how important it was once to get to the lighthouse, it puts things in perspective in a tender and nostalgic way, and reminds one of how life brings about these colossal changes in values and in valuation. So that's a factor, and there is a presence in the book, of course, it's a question I've asked in my quiz, of a world before the flood, a world where culture expressed in many forms in the book, including conversations with people about visits to European museums, and an innocent world, a world in which such things could be done without being overshadowed by the horrors of loss. This is something we've come to know a little of here in America in recent years, remembering the world before 9/11 or the world before COVID-19. It all seems very blessed. It all seems bathed in a sunshine that we no longer enjoy. And this is how it seems now in the very opening, carefully, delicately chosen by Virginia Woolf, as, of course, is everything in the book, with a singular delicacy, but her cleverness as an author in plumbing to the heart of the world she's describing and the ways in which we were about to change and the ways in which we have changed in the 1920s from the Victorian age are chosen with such precision but such subtleness, so that Mrs. Ramsay, sitting on the floor, cutting out pictures from the catalogue for the Army and Navy stores, of course, in those days, and even in my youth in Britain, the Army and Navy stores still persevered, although they don't anymore, and are an absolute relic of a time. I've no idea why they're called that, how they were founded to be connected to the military, but that connection to the military sounds a little motif in the music of the opening. a note that perseveres. Army and Navy. They had a famous illustrated catalogue, and much was accomplished in the 19th century. Many of the beautiful buildings that you see if you go to Park Slope in Brooklyn, for instance, were assembled by catalogue. People sent off for their version of a brownstone based on a catalogue. So in that way, the world of the late 19th and early 20th century is much more like our own, where we order so much from Amazon than one might think. So there she is, cutting out little pieces, little images to endow a refrigerator with heavenly bliss. We still do this. I don't know that they had magnets on theirs, but her son is watching this, and it seems to have an extraordinary magic to him. And she says in the long paragraph that opens the book after the first few words, to her son, these words, her words about if it's fine tomorrow, what we'll do, conveyed an extraordinary joy, as if it were settled. The expedition were bound to take place, and the wonder to which he had looked forward for years and years, it seemed, was after a night's darkness and a day's sail, within touch. And so it was, with the infallibility that we attributed in our childhood to our parents, to a mother like Mrs. Ramsay. He's 6 years old, James here, and she says, Virginia Woolf says that he belonged, even at the age of 6, to that great clan which cannot keep this feeling separate from that, but must let future prospects with their joys and sorrows cloud what is actually at hand. Since to such people, even in earliest childhood, any turn in the wheel of sensation has the power to crystallize and transfix the moment upon which its gloom or radiance rests. And already we're thrust into a style of writing focused on what I mentioned in the previous video as interiority, the things that separate us utterly from each other, even though we proceed to try and to make assumptions on our common humanity. But the movement that whose name I dare not mention, since I've asked you in the quiz what it's called, oh my God, the writing of the early 20th century focused much more on our strangeness to each other, if only as a means to make that a central part of our understanding of the world and of people, and not an incidental part. So we, in contemplating what we have wrought as a species, and what we felt we had wrought in the wake of the First World War, we have to account for these vast distances between people and the vast distances inside people. And here James is described as, it's lovingly described how the items that his mother is cutting out of the catalogue, these were so coloured, Woolf writes, and distinguished in his mind, that he already had his private code, his secret language, although he appeared